A months-long state of emergency has just been declared. Also, a quote, megafire is now breaking out and causing evacuations. And we are also seeing another volcanic eruption happening. So lots of news is going on. Let's get into this first, all right? A month-long state of emergency has been declared. And this is happening right now in Utah. You can see here, Utah governor declares month-long state of emergency due to intensifying wildfires. It says during a press briefing regarding updates on the fire on Friday, Governor Cox gave an urgent message to Utahns to, quote, be careful. Quote, I haven't begged in a long time, and I'm begging people right now to please exercise extreme caution. All right, this comes as a massive fire is taking over, multiple fires actually are taking over parts of Utah right now. And we also have a quote mega fire outbreak in Arizona right now, which is creating its own weather systems and its own quote fire clouds, all right, pyro clouds. We'll get into that in just a second, but you can see here Monroe, Utah. Utah is under a 30-day state of emergency as crews continue battling the Monroe Canyon wildfire and the other large fires that have burned so far in 2025. It says here that the Monroe Canyon Fire, which began on July 13th, has burned 57,000 acres and is only 4% contained. All right, you can see here, here's some pictures and video of these fires happening in Utah. All right, and these are overwhelming the emergency services there. This is causing evacuations for people that live in these areas, and also the firefighters are overwhelmed with the amount of fire and also the size of these fires. All right, so this is why he's declaring the state of emergency here. Also, a volcanic eruption just happened. We will get into that in just a second, but a quote mega fire has also been declared as well too in Arizona. It says here Grand Canyon's Dragon Bravo fire reaches quote mega fire status, which means it surpassed over 100,000 acres. Absolutely insane. And this is actually the largest fire in Arizona history now, and one of the largest ones in U.S. history now. It says as of Friday, the Dragon Bravo fire has burned 111,970 acres, becoming a mega fire. Listen to this right here. It's just going to show exactly what's going on and give you some more details on these pyrocumulus clouds, which are clouds that are literally on fire. Okay, so they're extremely hot, and they are actually changing weather patterns and changing the weather and creating their own weather in this part of the country. All right, listen to this really quick, and then we'll talk more about it.
Especially on Fridays. Sometimes we can have Abby Hornacek join us. But in this case, there are a couple of fires that we've seen burn through 2 of America's national parks.
Yeah, and look at the time-lapse video we have for you. This is the Dragon Bravo fire in Grand Canyon, Arizona. The fire was able to produce these pyrocumulus clouds because of the heat, the intense heat, pushing smoke right up into the atmosphere. So you get these robust cauliflower plumes that shoot up miles, several miles, dozens of miles into the atmosphere. It's wild to actually watch. The Dragon Bravo fire, it is now considered a mega fire and has been active for nearly a month in northern Arizona. More than 110,000 acres have burned as of this morning. Notable landmarks have been destroyed. The Grand Canyon's North Rim, it remains closed. And remembering, this broke out the 4th of July, and the cause, lightning.
Hate to see it too, especially just how much land has been burned. And in the southwest corner of Yellowstone National Park, a lightning strike also is to blame for the...
All right, I wanted to show you something too, because I heard different conflicting narratives. Let me show you this really quick, because they're saying that it was caused by lightning, but then they're also saying that it was a controlled burn. All right, so listen to this really quick from Fox, giving just a little segment on this fire, what they're saying.
The panel on President Trump's order to move submarines in response to comments from Russia's former president. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 10 in Phoenix says a fire that continues to burn near the Grand Canyon is now one of the biggest in Arizona's history. It was sparked by lightning on July 4th. It was initially managed as a controlled burn before dry and windy conditions fanned the flames, prompting evacuations at the Grand Canyon's north rim. At least 70 structures have been destroyed, including an historic Grand Canyon Lodge.
All right, so you heard that there. I just thought that was interesting too. A little bit different narratives we're seeing, where one narrative is that it was struck by lightning and then it was a controlled burn. So I'm not sure if it was struck by lightning and then they decided to make it a controlled burn because the fire already started and it got out of control from the wind. Not sure exactly the details on this, but I thought that was interesting. And actually, the largest state fire in New Mexico history happened a couple years ago, and that started as a controlled burn as well too. I was actually in that part of the country in southern Colorado, and we were getting a ton of smoke from it. All right, so thought that was interesting. All right, there's also volcanoes that are happening right now. All right, so we just had another volcanic eruption. This time it happened in Indonesia. Okay, this is actually a pretty typical area for eruptions, and this is actually part of the ring of fire that we've been talking about in the Pacific Rim here, but it's more further away from the United States than, say, Russia or in the United States like Alaska. But it says here, for the second day in a row, one of Indonesia's most active volcanoes, Mount Lewotobi Laki Laki, erupted. It says the explosion launched a column of smoke of volcanic material which shot up to 11 miles in the sky early Saturday morning. Debris from the volcano blanketed villages, but no casualties have been reported. It says the explosion was one of the country's largest since the 2010 eruption of Mount Merapi, the country's most volatile volcano. All right, so Indonesia has multiple active volcanoes, and it says on Friday an eruption occurred just hours before another one Saturday morning. Smoke and ash went as high as 6.2 miles as the volcano lit up in the sky with glowing lava and bolts of lightning. So this is a real picture. This is pretty incredible, this picture here, honestly. And it's real, but this is what happens when these volcanic eruptions happen, is that the earth is electrically charged. The earth is geomagnetic. And when these releases happen, there's also energy that's released, and some of it is in the form of plasma. Some of it manifests in the form of plasma. And that's why we are seeing these crazy, almost unrealistic looking lightning and plasma strikes happening at the same time as a volcano. And this actually happens quite a bit. All right, there's a major connection between lightning strikes and earthquake activity and volcanic activity. A lot of times when we see major earthquakes like the one in Turkey that happened a few years ago now, that was devastating. It was reported that there were lots of lightning strikes reported right before and after the earthquake. Okay, and this is because there is a connection between the atmosphere and the ionosphere being electrically charged and ionized by the sun. Okay, the sun is at an increased point of activity right now. It's in the middle of its grand solar maximum, and the sun sends out ionizing an electromagnetic energy that is then absorbed by our atmosphere, absorbed by our ionosphere, and these particles are charged up. And this energy makes its way to the earth as well too, into the ground, and can potentially have effects on things like earthquake and volcanic activity. So these are all related, and the earth itself and the environment and the atmosphere is electrically charged, right? So that's why we're seeing these plasma remnants and these plasma artifacts pop up during this volcanic eruption, right? So this is some real stuff to see here, and this is what we could see if there was ever a big volcanic eruption inside the United States, in Alaska, Mount Spur, in Washington, in Oregon, right? These areas, Mount Rainier. We could see these, Yellowstone even potentially, but that is more of a defunct volcano at this point. But if we ever see anything like this happen in the US, we could see these plasma events in concurrence, right? So I just thought this was pretty spectacular, this picture here, all right? So more increased activity, all right? We had this volcanic eruption happen too just a few days ago, all right? So it seems like there has been a shift in the plate tectonics of the earth after this 8.8 earthquake. It seems like potentially new pathways, maybe it opened up a new pathway for these magma channels to now make its way to the surface, right? Because it's always trying to find its way to the surface, but it depends on if it has a open pathway or not, and also how much pressure is in the system currently. So maybe we saw new pathways open up because this 8.8 earthquake in Russia, it was measured all the way in New York, right? The seismic activity from it and the shaking was measured all the way in New York. Okay, so this caused changes probably almost throughout the entire world, had some type of change geologically from this earthquake, all right? So just something to think about. There could be new pathways being developed and new pressure release valves being developed as well too, and new areas where the pressure is being sent to, right? And maybe it was being sent to one area now, and now it's being sent to here, right? So we're going to see the aftermath. I think this is part of the aftermath of this 8.8, and we're going to continue to see this, I think, over the next few weeks especially, and over the next few months. We're going to see rippling effects from this. And you can even see here that there's been a lot of earthquake activity, all right? So we're even having earthquakes in the United States and Kansas now, all right? Check this out. We had a 2.7 in Kansas and a 3.4 in Kansas today. This happened August 2nd. We also had a 2.6 today, August 2nd, in Nevada, a 3.1 in Big Bear Lake, California, a 3.7 in Guadalupe, Victoria, Mexico. All right, we also had a 5.8 in southern Mexico as well too, north of Guatemala. 5.8. That's a pretty decent earthquake. It's not a huge earthquake, but it's a big earthquake. It's a good sized earthquake. You're gonna feel it, and there's gonna be shaking. So 4.3 as well in Nicaragua, 2.6 Crescent City, California. We had a 2.7 in Central Alaska, 3.4 Sandpoint, Alaska, right? So these earthquakes that we're seeing in the middle of the country, in Kansas, places like this is the energy being released, okay? So look at all the aftershocks still happening in Russia, right? So all these aftershocks, all this energy is still being released and transferred along these fault lines and potentially ending up in places like the US and Mexico now, right? We're seeing earthquake activity, not strong earthquakes, but we're seeing shifts, this energy get to the US now, right? A few days later. So lots of big things going on, right? We have these fires, we have these earthquakes, we have war news going on, World War news, World War III fronts happening, all right? There's a lot of big things going on, and you need to be prepared for it. You need to be ready. You need to be stocked up, because it could happen where you live next, right? No one ever expects it to happen where they live: an earthquake, a fire, a flood, a natural disaster, or even a war. But these things are becoming more common, more prevalent, more frequent, and your odds of it affecting you seem to be getting higher. All right, these mega fires, quote mega fires, these are things we never really even heard of until the past few years, and now we're seeing them happen every year and every few months. All right, so just make sure you are getting prepared, getting stocked up. You have water, you have water filtration, you have access to a natural water source, you have an evacuation plan, you have food for a few weeks. All right, you have some type of power generation, whether it's like a solar generator, gas generator, whatever you need, some type of battery systems. Just have backups in case you're in this situation. And think of your animals too. How are you going to evacuate your animals? You have horses, you have cows, things like that. Have plans, have systems, because it could be coming for your area next. All right, and it says here that it's creating these, quote, fire clouds. And this other fire in Utah that has been burned is 75 square miles. All right, this is massive. And people are saying that there's ash raining down, all right, on top of their homes. Even people that aren't being affected by the fire directly, they're inhaling the smoke, all right? They are having ash fall from the sky. And the smoke, it's heavy. I've been near these fires before. It's heavy and it's concerning because, one, you think the fire is closer than it is when you see a big plume of smoke come in, and it's hard to tell exactly how close it is or where it's coming from. And two, it's also smells terrible, and it's terrible for you, especially if you have like smaller kids or older people, you know, have breathing issues. It's going to be harder on their lungs, this fire, this smoke, and it blankets entire areas. So the fire is 75 square miles, but then the smoke itself can cover hundreds of miles. Sometimes, 500 miles away, you can be affected from the smoke. States away on the other side of the country could be affected by the smoke. Thankfully, that's not happening right now, but these areas are being affected heavily. The air quality is very low. Air quality alerts have been issued in these areas, and power has been going out as well too in these local areas, in communities. It says here that in Antimony, Utah, 54 miles south of Monroe, the town's 123 residents were without power on Thursday afternoon. Mayor Casey King, who was helping people gather food and supplies at the community center, said they could be without power for a week. Right? So I'm telling you, in these emergency situations, you need to have at least a couple weeks. Solar generators, gas generators, things like that. Alternative power could save your life. Right? You could plug your satellite internet into it. You can charge your phone. You can get in contact with people, charge your radio. All right, have a crank radio. I have like a whole, bushcraft camping backpack set up that I use whenever we go camping, and it has a crank radio in it. It has all these things, water filters, everything you need essentially for, a survival situation. Have these things in your home just in case. All right, power without a week, that's a long time. It's not like 12 hours, power goes out for 12 hours. It's a big deal. You start getting antsy. You're like, all right, when's this going to work? I want to, I want some internet. I want to cook some food. I want to see what's going on in the world, all right? I want to check on things. But a week, and it could go on longer, that's a long time, right? So that's why they've declared a state of emergency for 30 days, because they're anticipating these fires to at least bare minimum continue for 30 days and might even continue until the winter season, fall season, when it starts raining more and it starts snowing more. They might just have to hold on until then. It might be uncontainable at this level. It says a power company, which is Garcane Energy Cooperative, said it was working to restore power as quickly as possible and brought in backup generators. Marnie Reynolds, a resident of Anemone, worried for the town's many elderly residents. She has been using a camp stove to offer hot meals to neighbors and is using a generator to help people refrigerate groceries and medications. All right, it's critical having a generator. I lived off-grid in my RV for years, boondocking, and that was like our main power source was a gas generator. All right, and we have little, tiny backup solar generators as well too, which work great, but they're not great for powering fridges and things like that unless you get a really big one, which some of them are. It says here, quote, "We've been facing a lot of challenges, but we have the best community," she said. In Richfield, Utah, 10 miles north of Monroe, Lee Stevens said his yard was coated in ash. He and his wife, who has asthma, is sensitive to the smoke, have not been told to evacuate, but are making preparations in case the fire spreads. The National Interagency Fire Center said on Thursday that even with fewer square miles having burned so far this year on average, many parts of the country remain vulnerable to new starts and fast-moving flames. All right, so it's devastating. This happens every single year in this part of the country, but it's also, it shouldn't be happening. All right, I'm really skeptical of the whole lightning strike narrative, honestly. I know that can happen, but it seems very low probability. And then the mixture of saying that it was a controlled burn as well too, I'm not sure exactly what that's supposed to mean, but it doesn't sound good, right? And I'm not sure why they're even doing controlled burns in places like the Grand Canyon, Arizona. It's so dry and desertified that it doesn't seem safe to even do a controlled burn there. And it doesn't seem like there's much vegetation to even burn anyways, right? And they do controlled burns in certain areas because certain plants actually need the burn to reproduce and to continue growing. Certain grasses and certain trees, actually, like certain pine trees like bristlecone pines, actually need extreme heat to open up their pine cones, and they pop open and shoot seeds everywhere when they get hot. And they actually do need that. Certain type of pine trees, they need fire, and they're accustomed to fire, certain environments. But there's not many pine trees in Arizona or the Grand Canyon. It's mostly scrub or juniper pines, which are very small and not very fire resistant, right? So it doesn't really make sense to even do a controlled burn, in my opinion, in this area. And now it's gotten out of control, right? Because it's extremely dry and winds. So be aware of these things too. They're always happening around you, and they put out alerts, but sometimes they get out of control, right? And can burn people's homes, people's neighborhoods, and historic sites. Thankfully, there's not many people that live in the Grand Canyon, but there are people that live here in Utah where this fire is spreading, all right? And it says here the fire has burned 12 power poles, and many homes have been without electricity, all right? So have a plan, be prepared, have water too, right? One of the big things that people say that have experienced these fires where they've saved their home is that they spray their house with water. So when the power's still on and their well's pumping, or if the water's still going, if you're on city water, but most of the time you're on a well if you're out in the country with these fires, power's still on, drain the well if you can, all right? Use as much water as you can to soak the surrounding areas, soak the ground, and soak your house, soak the wood, soak the soil, soak the trees, soak all the grass, get everything as wet as possible. I've seen people say that has saved their home. It's not guaranteed 100% or anything like that, of course not, but it definitely raises your probability of not your home not burning down, right? So to things like metal roofs and just not having trees close to your house, right, that are flammable. So thank you guys. Hope you guys are staying safe, staying prepared out there, staying stocked up. I hope you have big blessings for your life, your family, and I hope you have a big old blessed day.